Hi guys, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how to schedule events to occur in the future in Python. We're going to just schedule some basic functions, and then later on we're going to create a program to mine crypto prices and load them into Excel spreadsheets every 10 seconds or every so often. So let's get started. What we want to do first is we want to import the sched library. And what we want to do is we want to execute some function once 5 seconds in the future. So right now, we're just going to focus on executing a function at some point in time later on. So this sched should be included as part of Python, but if not, you can install it like this. We're also going to import the time library, which is included with Python. And there's a few reasons we'll do that. The first one is we need that to create our scheduler object. So we'll say sched.scheduler time.time, which actually just gives us the current time. And then time.sleep, which is actually just a function that's used to delay the program from running for however long we want. So usually we'll run time.sleep and then 5, if, for example, we want to delay a program from running for 5 seconds. Now that we've done that, we're going to create a function, and this is the function that we're going to run once in the future. This is the function that we're going to schedule to run later on. So we'll say def print message, we'll have a parameter message, and then just print that out. Okay. So we just want to run, so actually really in our program right here to start out, we're just going to run this once 5 seconds later. So we'll basically create an event called event1. And we're going to say scheduler.enter, basically entering this into our scheduler, our 5, 1, the name of our function, print message, and then the parameter to enter into our function, which is actually going to be entered as a tuple. And that's going to be event1, comma. So that means that we're just going to print event1 out, the string event1, every 5 seconds. And then this is also priority. So I'm just going to mark this right here. Our first parameter is going to be the time delay. So we want this to run 5 seconds in the future, and that's going to be in seconds. If you wanted to run something like 2 days in the future, then you'd have to find the number of seconds. The priority, which I'll get to in a second, and then the function to execute, which is print message, and the function parameters, which is just event1. Now what we're going to do to kind of demonstrate this priority is we're going to create another event. We're going to use the same function. So we're going to say event2, and we're going to have this also run every 5 seconds and do the same thing, except it's going to print out, it's going to take a parameter of event2, and we're going to give it a priority of 2. That means that even though these are both scheduled to run 5 seconds in the future, this one is going to run first because it has a priority of 1. So let's go ahead and type in scheduler run to kick our scheduler off, and let's run this code. We're going to go ahead and do this. We'll say Python example1.py, and then we're going to run that. Okay, we're waiting for 5 seconds. And there we go, we got event1 and then event2. So just one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Event1 and event2. Maybe I didn't count that perfectly, but oh well, I'm not a human watch. So let's go ahead and clear that. Now I want to show you not just how to run events in 5 seconds, but how to run events cyclically. Okay. Now, what we're going to use is we're just going to use the time.sleep function. And we're just going to put that down here. So we're going to say I equals 0. We're going to use a while loop while I is less than 10. Print hello. Or we could even run print message. Print message. Event3, and then we're going to say time.sleep2, followed by I equals 1. So basically what this is going to do is we have this while loop right here, and we're going to run print message. We're going to start out by running print message. We're going to wait for 2 seconds. We're going to do I equals 1 and then come back up here. And we're going to do this 10 times. So basically what we're going to do is this while loop is going to run 10 times, and each time we're going to run event3, and we're going to wait for 2 seconds and then continue on. Now, this is just an example. So this could be, instead of 2 seconds, this could be like 2 days. This is just a number of seconds, or this could be 2 hours, or whatever we want it to be. This could also run infinitely if we wanted it to, although that's never advisable. So right here, we basically just have it running 10 times over the course of 20 seconds. And actually, we're going to run both of these just kind of to show how things work between the two of them. So let's go ahead and run this. We're going to have this part running first, and then we're going to have this running, okay? And I'll kind of explain the sequence after this, but let's run this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we should get event 1 and event 2, and now we got event 3, 2 seconds, event 3, 2 seconds, event 3, 2 seconds, event 3. And I'm not going to like wait 20 seconds because that's like a bit useless. But basically, this was just 5 seconds in the future. This was cyclically every 2 seconds, okay? If we did while true, this would just run for all of eternity every 2 seconds. And we actually wouldn't need any of this. Now, one thing to point out is that these run in sequence, okay? So this runs, and then this runs, and then this runs. So for example, we can't have this running, so we can't have these schedules running at the same time that this while loop is running, right? Or even right here, let's say that we had while true. I'm just going to go ahead and probably just get rid of this for now. Let's just say that we had while true, print message event 3, and this is running every 2 seconds. Let's actually just make this run 2 times. So we'll say while I is less than 2, I equals 0, I plus equals 1. And I should probably, well, let's just say print event 3. Forget about print message. And now we'll say j is less than 2. Print event 4. Time.sleep 2. And then I equals I plus 1. Or I plus equals 1. So basically, what I want to demonstrate right here, actually this should be j, is the fact that, let's say we run both of these right now. All right, let's just give this a try. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this. So we have event 3 running, and then event 3 running again, and then event 4, and then event 4. Now, these are running synchronously. So these are running on a single thread, and this is going to run first, and then this is going to run first. Using just this functionality or the sched library we went to, there's no way, for example, for event 3, for this loop, for this functionality to run at the same time as this is working. So this is important because let's say we have an application we want to run and we want to be available to the user, but while the user is doing work on that application, we want events to be happening in the background every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. We can't do it this way. And this kind of gets to a concept called threads, all right? So right now, our Python application is functioning as a single-threaded application. It's functioning in one lightweight process. That means that this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and then any other functionality you want after this is going to happen after these events have run. Now, if we want to run an event in the background, let's say we have a GUI application, and we want the user to be able to work on the application, but then have events happen in the background. Then we need to use a multi-threaded program. So we need to somehow make it so that, for example, this code and this code could be running at the same time. So maybe you'd have event 3 and event 4 printing out simultaneously. And that's going to be our next example. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to look at an asynchronous example. So while right here we had these two events running one after the other, we want to create events that can happen at the same time. So rather than, for example, let me just clear this right here and run this. So rather than, right here we've got event 3, event 4, and then event 4. What we want is to have event 3, event 4, event 3, event 4, to know that both of these are happening at the same time. So let's go ahead and let's do that here in example 2. First, we're going to import time, and then we're going to import a library called time loop, which is the key to having timed events run at the same time, asynchronously. And if you don't already have this installed on your computer, you can run this with pip install time loop. Now, let's see. Import time loop. All right. Seems like right here, I need to do from time loop, import time loop. Cool. Okay. Next, we're going to have from date time, import time delta, which helps us deal with basically periods of time, so delays. Next, we're going to create an object. We're going to say t1 equals time loop. And we're going to use a decorator now. We're going to say t1.job interval equals time delta. And we want to run, let's say, event 4 every 5 seconds. Or let's say every 2 seconds. All right. So wait, that's going to be t1 job, actually. And this is a decorator, so we need a function underneath it that's going to be what executes every 2 seconds. So we'll say def event 3. And then we're just going to say print event 3. All right. So we want this to run every 2 seconds. And then we're also going to have t1.job and then we'll have interval equals time delta. And let's have this run, let's say, every 3 seconds, okay? So we'll say def event 4, print event 4. Now, the way this works involves threads. We'll get back to threads in a second. Because we kind of need to talk about, because we're going to run some synchronous code and we're going to see the difference once we've done this. So we've got these. This should run every 2 seconds and 3 seconds, but these are going to be running at the same time. So then what we need to do is we need to do t1.start. But this is sort of running in the background. So if we just do like Control C, it's not necessarily going to end this task. So we need to create some functionality in order to be able to do that. So let's say we're going to say while true, and we're going to check this is going to allow us to check every 1 second whether someone has interrupted it with the keyboard or done Control C or something like that. So let's say accept keyboard interrupt, t1.stop, and then break. All right. So basically, we're going to check every 1 second, and we're going to see if someone tried to interrupt the program with the keyboard with Control C. If they did, we're going to stop these tasks from continuing, and these would otherwise go on infinitely if we didn't. And then we're going to break out of this infinite while loop right here. So let's go ahead and let's run that. So remember, we should have event 3 and then event 4. This is running every 2 seconds. This is running every 3 seconds, but they're both running at the same time. So let's go ahead and clear this up and save this. Second is invalid. Okay, seconds. Cool. All right, so we're starting the time loop right here. All right, we've got event 3, then event 4, then event 3, right down here, then event 4. Let's move this up here, event 3, event 4. Okay, now let's kind of break out of this. Let's do Control C. Cool, okay. That stops the job, it stops time loop from executing, and it exits, and it ends the program effectively. So notice these ran at the same time, even if we change this to 2 seconds. They're just happening simultaneously at this point, right? Every time we're getting 3, 4 instantaneously. So that's an example of how instead of running events at one after the other, like right here synchronously, we can run events asynchronously. Now, let's say we have a synchronous event down here, right? So we have something like this. We'll just put this right here. And all right. We're going to name this event 5, and this is going to run every 2 seconds. Let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what happens. So we should have this running every 2 seconds, this running every 2 seconds, and theoretically this running every 2 seconds. These are asynchronous, and this is not. So let's go ahead and run this. So we've got these running. They just keep running every 2 seconds at the same time. And this isn't running though. It's because this is synchronous. So let's do Control C. And once we've ended the time loop, once we've ended these tasks, now we've got event 5 running, and it's only going to run 2 times. Now, the reason this works the way it does is because basically, this is running on a main thread, okay? So in Python, as we kind of touched on the previous example, we've got a main thread, and from our main thread, we can create other separate threads. Each of these threads represent different processes working in parallel. So they're each doing their different tasks at the same time, right? So right here, these are set up to run on separate threads. So they can happen at the same time. And this task hasn't even been invoked yet. So for example, if we had this one right here also running on a separate thread, all of these could run in parallel. But because this is set up to run synchronously, this is only going to run on the main thread, and the other is going to run on separate threads. So when we end this task, we're kind of ending this whole multi-threaded, multi-processing, multiverse thing. And then we're going back to a regular program where everything runs on the main thread. So basically, like most programs you have probably run before are just running on one thread. They're single-threaded. They're like this, one after the other. Here, we had the specific system or setup where we're running things in a multi-threaded fashion. And that was the time loop. And things were great. They were all running at the same time. But we ended that, and right here we went back to a single-threaded architecture where things run one after the other, which is why this didn't run at first. It only ran after we ended this. And that's the power of this time loop library. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our next example. Okay, so what we're going to do for example 3 now is we're going to use time loop to get some data on Bitcoin prices and append it to an Excel spreadsheet, which is crypto prices. So right now, if we open up crypto prices, we've got this right here. It's basically just an empty spreadsheet. What we want to do is we're going to add data for Bitcoin and Litecoin to the spreadsheet, and we're going to add pricing data specifically. So let's go up here and do import time, and then requests. We're going to be getting our data from an API, a public API, and every 5 seconds we're going to be getting data for Bitcoin, and every 10 seconds we're going to be getting data for Litecoin and writing it to Excel. Now, we're going to use a different library this time called OpenPyXL. And I mean different because if you've seen some of the other tutorials, we've used XLSX Writer. But this is actually a new library that I discovered, which is actually easier to use. So if this is sort of a topic or a functionality you're interested in, I'd recommend checking out OpenPyXL. It can be installed like so, pip install OpenPyXL. So for load workbook, and then from time loop, import time loop. And from datetime, import time delta. All right, so what we're going to do again, as usual, is we're going to create our time loop object. So we're going to say t1 equals time loop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to specify the file name. So we're going to say file name equals crypto prices. Actually, it's got to be lowercase right there. Crypto prices .xlsx. Now what we want to do is we're going to create a workbook object. So we're going to say workbook equals load workbook. It's this function right here. And then file name. Followed by getting our worksheet, which is worksheet equals workbook.worksheets, and then index 0. So this means basically the first sheet or sheet 1 as we specified right up here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write our time loop functions. So we're going to say t1.job interval equals time delta. Well, let's say seconds equals 5. We'll correct that right there. And this is going to be t1. And then we're going to create a function called def, let's say capture or mine Bitcoin prices. It's really data mining to a certain extent, using an API. And then we're going to create a second job. We're going to say at t1.job interval equals time delta, seconds equals 10. And we're going to say def mine Litecoin prices. Pass. Okay. So yeah, definitely missed the parentheses right here and right here. Save that. Now we're going to go ahead and write our code to actually get the Bitcoin prices. First thing we're going to do is we're going to access our API to get our Bitcoin prices. So we're going to say request.get HTTP API.coincap, and this is just a publicly accessible API. You don't really need to register or anything like that in order to access this API. You could just straight up use this URL that we have right here. Then you're going to say Bitcoin price equals response.json. So this Bitcoin data is actually being sent back in JSON format. So using response.json, we can actually parse that into a Python dictionary. Then data, price, USD. So this is actually just based on the structure of the JSON that was returned. We're going to print that out in our terminal right here just to make it easy to see that everything's working. So let's say Bitcoin price, and then we're going to print that every time it runs, so every 5 seconds. Next, we want to create a timestamp as well to show when exactly that data has been taken. And we're going to use format along with our braces right here. Let's say format time.ctime. And then we want to create the actual row that we want to append to our Excel spreadsheet right here. All right. So we'll say Bitcoin price row equals Bitcoin price, and then timestamp. So then we're going to say worksheet.append Bitcoin price row. So we're basically adding it to this worksheet. Which we specified right up here, which is this sheet 1 in crypto prices. So we'll say Bitcoin price row. All right. Okay, cool. So now our code for Litecoin is pretty much going to be identical right here. So we're just going to copy paste this. In reality, we could probably create a function to do this, but for now we'll just copy paste it. So we'll say we're going to change this just to Litecoin. That'll get us the data for Litecoin as opposed to Bitcoin. And we'll just change our variable names just to be like concise. So Litecoin. Other than that, there's actually nothing that really needs to be changed. Again, another case for just using a function, but this is just a tutorial. I'm not trying to write production code here. And Litecoin price row. Just change this. Cool, okay. Now we need to do a few more things. So we need to, I'm just going to close this for a second. We've got this code right here. We need to actually start off these tasks. So t1.start. And then we need to actually write our code to end these threads, or to, basically terminate these threads. And then we'll say while true, try time.sleep, as we did before. And basically when we do hit Control-C and interrupt this program, we're going to do not just one thing, but two things. So before, what we were doing is we were just ending T1. So we had T1.stop and then break. And now, but what we're also going to do is we're going to do workbook.save. So basically what we've done is we've appended all of this stuff to the worksheet, but all that data that should go into the worksheet hasn't really been put in there yet, and it isn't put in there until we do workbook.save. So at the point at which we end our time loops, that's when we add all the data into our Excel file. So let's go ahead and save this, and then let's go ahead and run this code and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and let's go ahead and hit play. So time loop just started. We've got Bitcoin price right down here, Litecoin price, Bitcoin price. Okay, Bitcoin price again, which is actually pretty expected. Litecoin price. So we're getting our Bitcoin and Litecoin prices right here. Let's go ahead and interrupt this. Let's do Control C. Okay, it looks missing one required positional argument, file name. So, on workbook.save, we needed to specify the file name right here. So it wouldn't have saved to our CSV. So let's go ahead and run this again. And then then we can go check our CSV. So we'll just give this a few seconds right here. Bitcoin, we'll just let this run. We'll get our Litecoin, and then we'll get one more Bitcoin. Okay, cool. All right, that's it. Let's go ahead and interrupt this right here. And now let's go ahead and open our CSV up. We've already got this in our Finder right here. And as you can see right here, we've got our data for our Bitcoin and our Litecoin, all in like nice little columns right here. So one thing I do want to point out is that I kind of did this in a weird way. Like I have a Mac and I don't have Excel. This is actually numbers. So I actually downloaded an Excel spreadsheet from Google Sheets, and then I opened that up here. And when I didn't do that, I had some issues with where this was appended exactly in the spreadsheet. So that might be an issue you run into, but it shouldn't be anything big. I don't even know if it would occur on your computer. Probably if I had Excel, it would show more nicely. But anyways, regardless, that's basically how you use time loop in tandem with an API to do something a bit more complex. You could also use this to generate or append to a CSV file if you wanted to, anything you want to do in parallel. This is kind of a long tutorial, but it does cover concepts like threads and timing, so I wanted to take some time to do it. Anyways, if you found value in this and you'd like to see more tutorials like this, please feel free to like and subscribe. Have a nice day.